Jake, 2D Mario has soul again. Can you believe it?
I thought it was a rhetorical question. I can't believe it.
Jake, after 20 years, 2D Mario finally has soul again. Can you believe that? Not rhetorical.
I can't believe it. Oh, no. Now, okay. All right. Okay.
There's no meta discussions happening here.
No.
So, yeah, Mario Wonder is obviously out. It's apparently doing extremely well in the sales as expected because it's 2D Mario. People will buy it no matter what. And I pretty much streamed the entire game as well. But I've had time to collect my thoughts, figure out kind of how I feel about this whole thing. And I know a lot of people have been asking us what we think of it. So, Jake, I want to talk with you about, how we're feeling about the game overall, especially with me as a longtime Mario fan, you as, I think, a little more fair weather Mario fan, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely just I feel like I didn't have quite as much of a conscious gamer mind when I played classic Mario games, and most of what I know of 2D Mario is definitely New Super Mario Brothers. So that's my perspective coming into this. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be interesting, even though I think it's going to weigh heavily on both of our perceptions. Me as a longtime fan having to endure the new series for 20 years or whatever. Right. So, yeah, let's just get down to our overall thoughts on the game. And right at the top, I think this game is very good. I think it's basically, it's a breath of fresh air after 20 years of mediocrity with a new series. And it's so nice to see Mario finally, in a return to form, essentially. A game that feels, creative, it has a great energy, it's fun, it feels like it has, heart put into it. And I love all that. But Jake, I have to say, I am a little mixed too at the same time. And this is kind of a top level of mix. I'm not I'm not mixed on the GameXplain scale, but it's when I look at this, when I look at some of the reactions to it, I'm I don't know if I'm fully on board as much as a lot of people are. I think it's a great step for the series. I had a lot of fun, but when I look back at it, I'm I don't know if there's that much that hops out to me immediately. There's some moments that were fun, but overall, I think it's already kind of leaving my mind, if that makes sense. I don't know. But Jake, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I'm similar to you where I see people talk about it being this radical reinvention of 2D Mario, and I'm not willing to go that far. I think in the hand and what I experience while playing is altogether pretty similar to my past 2D Mario experiences, but I do think that Nintendo is just better at pointing out what makes Mario so great this time around. And it's a lot of the stuff that has always made Mario so great, but now the way that we are wrapping it and presenting it to players is exciting in a way that it hasn't been exciting in so long. And that alone goes really far. It's kind of a funny game to criticize, right? Because I feel like I'm enjoying it so much when I play it. It's delightful and sweet and charming in a light way. Then I start thinking, but why don't I like this as much as I like the games that really speak to me? And that's kind of a tough question to answer. I think this game fills its niche super well. As a 2D Mario game on the Nintendo Switch, it is the most comfortable, most friendly to the player, 2D platformer that I've played in so long. It feels tight, it feels right, it feels nice. All of the different power-ups are fun to use and interesting. The Wonder Flower, we'll get into all of that stuff. It's all really great. But I think that the game really sings for me when I am playing it with others. I definitely have more fun when I'm playing this game with my fiance, who I've been playing pretty much the whole game with, than when I'm sitting there by myself going through and collecting the Wonder Seeds. Then the game just kind of becomes this thing that I am more familiar with.
Right.
But when I'm playing it with somebody else who, by the way, I think this perspective is actually really nice to have. Somebody who, she doesn't play a ton of games, but way back when got, a random DS Lite and New Super Mario Brothers for Christmas and, became obsessed with those games. And now I'm, looking at her and I'm so what do you think about this? It's, different, right? And she's yeah, it's different, but it's not that different. And I'm okay, see, that's valuable. That's interesting.
That really is interesting because, a big part of the marketing, at least for the game, feels like it's trying to be look how different, look how weird we are with these Wonder Flowers. And ultimately, I don't think it actually changes all that much. And we'll get more into that. But, addressing the top level again, I think what this game does, I think it largely does very well. I think that it just doesn't like push any boundaries here. Like, it's not doing much that I haven't really seen before. And, whereas 2D Mario used to be defined by that. So I think that's partially why it's not like making that big of an impact in my mind. Like, I feel like I've played other platformers in the last 10, 15 years that have done more to push the medium forward than Mario Wonder is here. But, I don't want to let that hold back what Mario Wonder does well. And again, the fact that this game actually is a fun, compelling 2D Mario that I wasn't actively bored by is awesome. That's great. I mean, I actually went back to, because you had mentioned that, I think you had mentioned that, like, in some respects, it really isn't all that different from New Super Mario Brothers. Like, it kind of feels like that, but with a larger budget and a little bit more care put into a lot of elements, a lot of individual elements, which kind of maybe goes to show that maybe those games weren't all that far removed from being great, or maybe it's the opposite. I don't fully know, but I do know when I look back at a long play of New Super Mario Brothers, just remind myself of what that game was like. I'm like, oh my god, this game looks so boring by comparison. And you go back to Wonder, it's got like all this, whimsical moments, it's got charm, it's like every animation has care put into it, and it does help. Like, I love that. I love those little touches, and it made the entirety of the game fun. I don't think there is a moment, by and large, there wasn't really a moment of the game where I felt like wish I wasn't doing this. I'm not having fun. I don't know, I just want this game to be over. It's all great. But I think part of it too is, at the same time, it all just kind of like meshed together for me. Like, not a whole lot stands out. The levels fall into the template of, it's normal, then it gets weird for like a minute, then it goes back to being normal, and it kind of feels a little gimmicky for that reason too. So it's weird for me, Jake. This is the hard one. It's like, I love the creativity here. They do a lot of great stuff. I'm excited for the direction that Mario's finally going in. Like, this is great. But I also don't think it does all that much that's worth like huge acclaim.
Let me ask you if my read on this is correct. As a longtime Mario fan and player, my understanding of what Mario Wonder is doing in terms of where it wants the player's focus to be is that I think a lot of past 2D Mario games, it was about like getting to the end of the level.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the main like focus and challenge. Whereas here, the timer is gone, and I kind of think the focus has changed, and it's more about like having these moments that like clock the player's like sense of mystery, of discovery. It's kind of about having like these little moments where it's like, okay, now we want you to consider this. Now we want you to consider this. And it's like, then you get the Wonder Flower and your considerations are kind of like upended. And that is like a different energy for these games, right?
It definitely is. There's never been like a toggle quite like this in the game where it's like, expect weird things to happen, and it does make you... It's interesting too, because you mentioned the lack of a timer, which I barely even noticed, because timers rarely been a factor in Mario, but it does at least suggest a conscious effort that they didn't want you to, by and large, rush through these stages. However, these Wonder Flowers are often about rushing. Like, there's often a time limit, or you're propelled forward in some way, whether it's something chasing you or something dropping on top of you. And so it definitely does mix up the energy. Like, it mixes up the energy, it mixes up the vibe, and kind of your goal, in a sense, like, which is often more about survival than anything. It lends an interesting cadence to the game, and maybe that's what I'm not sure if I love or not, because I liked it. Let me be clear about this. I thought this game was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the Wonder Flower elements, but I don't know if I loved it, because it kind of never gelled into a form that made a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I still don't fully understand the Wonder Flower's purpose, to be honest, because with few exceptions, you can almost always find them easily. There's occasional elements or moments when they're hidden, you have to look for them, and there's almost no reason never not to grab them. So it feels like they should have just been part of the level design, rather than a seemingly optional element that you don't have to collect, but you're basically always compelled to.
I completely agree with this, and I find it so weird that sometimes I'll replay a level and I'll be like, where was that freaking Wonder Seed? And the game's like, no, Jake, you need to actively avoid the big glowing thing we're pointing you towards, walk past it, and then when you get to the end of the level, we'll give you the Wonder Seed.
Right.
Like, that's ridiculous. That's not right. So I almost feel like it should just be part of the level, because there's a communication happening where you are being like kind of funneled to the Wonder Seed. In some levels you can't avoid it, and it just like sets up a weird expectation in my head, I think.
Yeah, should I grab it? Should I not? I mean, I always felt compelled to, but yeah, it is just a little weird. So and the cadence is just a little bit off for me, even if I still enjoyed the end result, and it does add this chaotic energy that Mario never has quite had to this degree before, which again, I don't know if I love that or not, but it is interesting.
And I think I really like it too. That's where I come down on it. But I think I have been hitting on this with almost every game I've played and reviewed lately. I feel like a lot of what I'm looking for as a player of video games is I want to see an idea build and crescendo and ultimately pay off in a new and interesting way that like takes it up to 11, if you will. And I kind of feel like Mario Wonder gets to 8 and just stays there the whole game, which is great, which is very impressive to have a 2D Mario game where every level is pretty good.
Yeah, no.
Is like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and that's worth applause. But I think I do want that kind of like really upending of my expectations, because once I get through 5 Wonder Flowers, it's hard, you know, there's not a lot where I go, oh wow, now this is taking the Wonder Flower idea in a whole new direction.
Right.
They kind of stayed on the same direction. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost feels like Nintendo almost held back in some sense. So we've almost said this in effect through their interviews where they've talked about some of the really crazy ideas that they had that they stepped back from. And I felt like, maybe it's just me, but I felt like I could feel that at times. Like, I never felt like it went too crazy. Now, to be fair, it might be because some of the zanier Wonder effects had already been shown off in trailers, so they weren't all that surprising when I got to them. And some of them still do stand out, like the silhouette levels where you're like tall Mario, which is, you know, still weird. You know, the singing prawn plants, which you encounter
I like the one where the Shadow U shows up.
Oh, yeah, so that's actually from Mario Galaxy.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, God, I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was cool. That he's on your back all of a sudden. I was like, oh man, that's that one.
Yeah, because he follows he mirrors your movements, or it follows what you're doing exactly. So it's like, how's this guy so good? Oh, he's doing what I'm doing. Yeah, so there's lots of like little moments like that. But you know, it's interesting, Jake, to your point again, where you mentioned everything is an 8, which isn't really a complaint, but like, you know, I was revisiting the game just for a discussion to remind myself just of any, you know, smaller moments or whatever. I was like looking through all the levels, and they each have like a thumbnail image. I'm like, I can't remember like which level this is, even with the thumbnails. But they all just kind of blended together for me, you know, with a handful of exceptions. And I think it's partially because Nintendo has this very clear vision for Mario, for 2D Mario at the least. They basically don't want to stray too far from it, and they just enjoy having these like little meta surprises inside, which, you know, I enjoyed too. But it feels like it's not it's not really pushing any boundaries, which 2D Mario used to do, and I feel like other platformers have done so more successfully now. Like, I will never stop singing the praises of Tropical Freeze, a game that I think did a great job really kind of pushing forward what platformers can do. And I feel like Mario doesn't want to go quite that far, and I don't know why. You know, that being said, it doesn't take away from what this game is, which is a very consistent level of fun throughout, which is, again, much more than I can say about any of the new Super Mario Brothers games, which is great. I mean, it made me enjoy 2D Mario again. It's been so long, Jake, since I've had that feeling.
Does the story register for you on any level?
No. Not in fact, Jake.
Not negative, not positive.
Nothing. It is a complete non-factor. I don't remember what happened to the Caterpillar guy at the end. Did he even do anything? I don't know why he exists simply as a vehicle for the badges, I think. Which actually, Jake, so since I mentioned Tropical Freeze, I think this is kind of like maybe an example of maybe Mario holding back when they shouldn't. This game still feels a little budget in places. Like, they clearly ramped up the animation budget, but you know, the opening is like whatever. There's no camera angle changes. It's completely flat in 2D. I'm sure by design, whether for budgetary reasons or just to maintain the same stylistic viewpoint throughout. But then I look at Tropical Freeze, full CG intro. They go nuts. Every world is effectively a fully realized 3D environment, despite being side-scrolling. Whereas in Mario Wonder, interestingly, I don't know if you've noticed this, Jake. Once I noticed, I couldn't get it out of my mind, is that the backdrops initially all look pseudo 3D, but they're almost always entirely 2D planes as well. Like, the mountains are all flat, and there's basically sprites. And once I noticed that, I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, it feels like kind of cheap, you know? And that's even something New Super Mario Bros. U didn't do. They actually had fully 3D rendered backgrounds, which, again, maybe a stylistic thing, maybe a budget thing. I don't know.
Yeah, not to like get crucified in the comments for saying this, but the truth is, I don't think I've seen a single review that has not praised this game's visuals. I'm like lukewarm on the visuals. I even feel like sometimes the resolution just ain't high enough. I like not to be a complete psycho, right. but yeah, there's times where I'm just like, we're doing these tricks like the silhouette level. where like we've been seeing that since like Donkey Kong Country Returns, like, or probably earlier than that. And I don't know. It's like there are like little things that pop up in this game, but there's nothing that's like visually really like causing me to have a blip on my radar other than like how it just generally looks all the time, which is nice. But I do think part of that is the sandbagging of New Super Mario Brothers doing a lot of work. So like removed from that, I don't know how impressive I would think this game looks.
I think the floor is lowered so much by the previous 2D Marios, in the new series that like, it really adding any amount of charm and creativity to wonder, would have helped, and it has, and they did a great job in many respects. I think the animations, fantastic. Love the animations. Little touches like Mario grabbing his hat and going through a pipe, Elephant Mario getting stuck into doorways is going through it. How the enemies react. Actually, this might be a great example of maybe kind of pushing what Mario has done beyond what it typically has, where the enemies seem a little bit more reactive than usual. You have ones that are like running away from you to chase them down. You have sleeping Goombas that awaken in a surprise as you approach them. That's all great stuff. It's pretty minimal, like it doesn't really affect too much by and large, but I like those low touches, and that's what I want to see really more of. Like the fact that they're really, it feels like the cast have personality here, whereas they haven't in really almost any of the 2D Marios. Now even including the classics, the originals, but that's because of, limitations at the time, so it was forgivable back then. But now I feel like I get the essence of these characters from the 3D games finally now in 2D, even pushed in different directions than they have typically. And I like that. I think it's cute, it's adorable, and they're fun.
I like that stuff too. I'm a little like, I like wanting to see more of that. I understand. I like when like the Goomba falls into like a little pit and he can't go left or right and he like makes a little expression. Like that's great stuff.
Yep.
But the truth is that I think when I'm like flying through a lot of these levels, I'm like, I don't know how much I'd really like pick up and notice that stuff if I wasn't like Jake from GameXplain. And like something that I personally would like to see them go in a stronger direction with is the macro, the bigger stuff. It is like so weird to me that like Bowser becomes a castle. We don't really do anything interesting with that, and he just kind of vibes in the middle of the map with the clouds around him as like one by one they go away. It's like weird to me that our companion is a caterpillar and we have these wonder seeds, wonder flowers, and we never have a moment of transformation for our little buddy who is, again, a caterpillar, which I feel is, you know what I mean? I feel that is like asking for it. So I don't know, there's just like stuff like this where there's some weirdness in like the Kirby games, for example.
Right.
That the Kirby games ramp up and they're not afraid to get like really weird and go in a strange direction. And I just like, in my head, I was just like, man, our little dude should turn into a giant butterfly. We do a level on his back. We do like, why not? You know what I mean? Then that would really like register and be memorable for people instead of this thing where it's like, what happened to Prince Florian? What did he do?
I will say the Bowser element in particular did feel. I'll even extend it to the boss fights, and I'll try to avoid any spoilers here. The boss fights in general are let down. You end up facing Bowser Jr. repeatedly, and they never feel all that different, though there are different mechanics, but they all feel fundamentally the same. And the final boss fight, I enjoyed it, but it didn't go as off the wall as I thought they might. I remember tweeting out, I'll bet you Mario becomes a castle at the end. They're gonna have like a giant castle battle. That does not happen, sadly. And even though I still liked what they ended up doing, it still didn't feel like as crazy as it could have, I feel. I mean, the story's whatever. I don't care too much that they didn't do more with it, even though I wouldn't have minded had they done so. I do want to focus in a little bit on maybe some of our favorite smaller moments though from the game. Like what are the creative moments that stood out to you?
I like the level where there's the birds that shoot the little straws, and then you get the Wonder Flower, and it turns into, they shoot bubbles, and you go up the level.
Yeah.
That, when that would happen, it's like visually really cool. The bubbles are like rainbow and fun, rather than kind of being like the clear bubbles that you expect. And it's one of those moments that like you're in the middle of the level, and it actually does, it's like a sharp turn. It's not like, okay, you're in a level with bulls, now there's a bunch of bulls.
Right.
It's a very like distinct, memorable change. I thought that was really fun. Again, like playing with my fiance at the time, she was like, whoa, this is crazy, and I was like, yeah, this is fun, this is good, yeah.
I love that. I'm trying to think of there's another example that was, I think, for instance, like when you become a spike ball yourself, you know, and you roll through the environment, like that's kind of cool. You know, even though we've seen things like that in Mario Galaxy games, but
I like the snowball, the giant snowball.
That's a fun
where
one.
all of a sudden. Yeah, that's a really good one. And then like the flagpole gets like caught up in it, and you see it go by. Like that's so sweet. That's really sweet.
That's really cool. That's a great detail. So and to your point too, you mentioned it earlier. I do want to credit the game for really finally figuring out how to make multiplayer work. They couldn't figure out for the other games. They screwed up in Mario Maker 2, or Mario Maker 2 specifically. They finally got it right, both online and local. Having it so you don't directly interact with the other players. Genius. That is how it should be done. You're not getting each other's ways. Effectively, co-op in the previous games, ironically, was almost a hard mode. Because you were always getting each other's way. You could, intentionally troll other players, which, to be fair, I had some fun with. But after, like, the novelty wore off, it's like, I never want to play this again in multiplayer. Here, though, I played through a few hours with some friends, and it's a lot more fun because you're not actively interfering with each other. You can still help each other out by taking out enemies, or I think sharing power-ups, or there's another, I think, a couple ways of interacting. And also another point to this is that they no longer had to build a level specifically so every platform can accommodate 4 people. It's all built around the solo experience, at least seemingly, and it still works for multiple people, and that's great. I love that, and even online too is a lot of fun because you can have that experience largely with other people, like randos, and you can all hang out, you can play through a level together, you can revive each other without interfering with each other, and it's cute. Like, I like that you can have these little moments with these people, and I even saw a great Twitter thread about someone who, like, it's almost made friends with these people. Like, he met up with a couple of other people online, and they ended up sticking together, I think, throughout most of the game, if not the entire game, or a good chunk of time. And they would, like, wait for each other to finish a platform or to catch up, and if someone died, they would all die so they could reset together, and that's adorable. That's cute. I love that. And the fact that someone can have that experience in a Mario game is impressive, especially with it running well. Mario Maker 2 ran like crap online. This game, flawless.
Yeah, I will say that no negative points since I can just toggle it off and forget about it. For me, I just visually I do not like how it looks when you're connected to online. I don't like how all of a sudden I have like a little heart score next to my name. I don't like seeing all the ghosts running around. Sometimes the ghosts running around, it's giving like kids that finish the quiz before you in class, and it's like at the bottom, it's like, oh, Joey reached the end. Yep. I'm like, all right,
pressure's on.
That's cool, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, for me, it's like, and there are some times where it's even like visually distracting. Like, it's maybe a little harder for me to keep my eye on my character because there's all these like ghosts running around in certain levels. But like the fact that you can just like toggle it off or whatever, completely forget about it. That's great. And I even like how you can like go into the setting to turn the online on, or there's like those little towers actually in the map.
Yeah,
that's just like a little dumb thing that I think is like sweet and nice to see. That
because it makes it a persistent reminder that it exists. If it's just in the menu, it's super easy to forget it's even there. But you always have little satellite towers that remind you, like, hey, you can play online too. So I liked all of that. Another thing I like, Jake, to get into the more creative elements of this game, the talking flowers. They seem to be a little divisive. I actually really like them a lot. That's not to say I need them in every 2D Mario game, but for this one specifically, I thought they worked great.
I love the talking flowers. I think that they're dope. I don't know why. I'm ready to like plant my flag against the people.
Or plant your flower.
That like the people that say they don't like the talking flower. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, I don't know. So a really cool thing is that and not a lot of people are going to take advantage of this for obvious reasons, but I thought it was so neat and cool that I could go into the settings and make my flower speak Latin American Spanish. Yeah. And it's like the text box is still English, and he like speaks, he has the Spanish dub, and it's like a really like, I find the voice to be entertaining, and I just didn't expect to have that ability in a first-party Nintendo game. I feel like that's unusual for them, and especially in like a US copy of a game. Normally you have to like download all those other languages. So it was just like it made my experience playing the game in a weird way feel more personal to me and like it was for me. So I just thought that was nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, the fact there's an option menu at all in a Nintendo game with more than like an option or two is pretty telling, and it's a pretty great sign.
They have so many languages in there. I don't know if you've looked, but there's like French, there's German, there's Japanese, there's 2 different kinds of Spanish. It's like they put them all on there. And the game's, I don't know, the game's like 8 gigabytes or something. Like, I don't know. Like, it's that's cool, you know.
There's probably like a collective 20 minutes of Flower chat. Maybe not even that. I don't know. That'd be interesting to get all the samples together. But I think the flowers are great. I love they make it feel like you always have an audience, you know, without having to play online. Like, they're always commenting on your gameplay, even if it's not necessarily specific to you, because, like, you know, they all have like a phrase or two they'll say, but they're written so well and timed just perfectly where it feels like they are directly commenting on like your style of gameplay. Like, I love when you find a secret and the Flower's like, how the heck did you get up here, you know? Or you know, other times you do something really impressive, like, you know, you make it through a hard part and they all cheer you on. I love that. Like, that's a cute little touch. It reminds me a little bit of the Lumas from Mario Galaxy, which did similar things, but they really kind of cranked it up here. I thought it was great, fun, and added. And that, I think maybe they, more than anything, are what make this game feel distinct from other 2D Marios.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. I like that idea of them being like a source of feedback for you as the player. That's not just like the Mario sounds that are kind of like passing you by. The one time I really appreciated their implementation was that first time you go into a level that they want you to time your jumps to the beat of the music.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and I'm like trying to like get in the rhythm, get it in, and the Flower, all of a sudden I hear him go, un, dos, tres, cuatro, un, dos. And I was like, oh, that's actually helpful. Like, thank you.
It is. Yeah,
it was cool. Yeah.
Great. I was that the Ninja Palace thing? Or I love that. Like, there's a handful of levels like that I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, Mario's never done that before. They've never had like these rhythm-based elements, and that even factors into one of the boss fights, which is fun. Like, that's totally different, totally unique. I enjoyed that. So yeah, Talking Flowers, big win.
How about the levels where it's like there's 5 coins hidden and you have to go find them all?
I hate those. I absolutely hate those levels. They are the worst.
Wow, tell me why.
I thought they were tedious. So maybe it's different when because you're playing, I believe, in co-op, which probably makes it a little easier. For me, I just found them tedious. Like, they all depend on some weird, like, quirk or, you know, it's some unique interaction that doesn't, by and large, really make a whole lot of sense, except for one level, which actually did. The rest, I felt like I was just jumping everywhere, hoping for an invisible block or, you know, some kind of clue of something to do. And
okay, the invisible blocks, we need to establish some ground rules, because I feel this game uses them too often. There was one of these levels, I think it was like do you remember the one where you had to, like, climb up storm clouds, and they were like raining, and you would like go up the rain to like go higher in the level? There was a one of these 5 things you needed to find that was hidden behind an invisible block that was in the middle of one of these storm clouds raining, and I don't know how you would just find that. You needed to just like go through the whole level and just like jump until you like happened to hit it. So that was the one instance where it stuck with me. But I will say, playing it co-op, what it did was it gave us an opportunity to just kind of like talk a little bit more, which I thought was kind of like fun and interesting, and be like, well, okay, we checked here, so it's probably not over there. It's got to be in this area. You know, what can we do? Oh, push the pipe. Like, that's fun. You know?
I can see that. I can see that being more enjoyable. Yeah, I played it primarily, or at least entirely, the first time single player. So I could see that definitely being a good cooperative experience. As a single-player experience, I just found it mind-numbing. I'm like, those are the levels I hated the most. Although I will say, I'm not the biggest fan of all the bite-sized levels, like, you know, the badge challenges, or those, you know, coin parks, whatever it is that we were just talking about. They feel like filler to me. And I understand the badges are largely meant just to train you on them. But I don't know. They, like, especially because they just make it visually tough for me to, like, you know, I just want to focus on the core level content, right? But then I've got all these other little bite-sized levels, like clouding of the world map or the menus. I'm like, I just want to go to the next main thing, you know?
The badge levels, I think, are kind of disappointing, just because it's like you do the first one and it's obviously a tutorial, and you go, okay, I'll allow this. And then you get to like, oh, difficulty's high. This is badge level 2 of this challenge. And I go, oh, this is what I want, baby. And then it's just like a tutorial again. And I just didn't. I was surprised that they couldn't turn it up a little bit more. Yeah.
So those all those bite-sized challenges effectively feel like what they've already done in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I think maybe it was a Wii U, and maybe both, where they had these challenges, but the difference was those existed entirely separate from the campaign, and like a whole different menu option. That's fine. I could easily ignore that or play it if I wanted to and know what I'm getting. I'm not a huge fan of like interspersing that throughout the main experience, just because I feel like it just kind of slows me down, you know, and I don't care. But since we're talking about badges a little bit, what did you think of them overall?
I really like them.
Okay.
I think that there's a degree to which the badges are maybe like closer to what I wish power-ups were. I've always had this criticism of Mario games where you can't really like design a level around a power-up as much as you would like, because at any moment you could just lose it, and you have to account for that in every player. So I've always thought maybe there could be a structural change in Mario where you could keep your power-ups so that we could really, zone in on that. But I think the badges kind of let you do that. Like when you get the dolphin kick and all of a sudden you play those levels and it's like, oh, I couldn't imagine not playing this with the dolphin kick. It's a way of like designing a Mario level with a lens on it that I think makes it in the hands a little bit more interesting to play. So I always like those levels that were like, okay, we just gave you a badge, now we're kind of pairing this level with that badge. So that made it fun for me. And also just as like a small other thing, like playing with my fiance and being able to have like a badge that like, okay, this is just gonna make your life easier. This is like, we really like the one where you crouch down and then get the really tall jump.
Yeah, the Mario 2 one, basically. Yeah.
There's just like a lot of moments in the game where if you missed something, that can kind of bring you back in.
Right.
And and as that, just kind of like making our experience smoother, it like worked really well.
Nice. Glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm pretty much just indifferent to them. Like neither positive or negative. Except I will say one of my complaints actually kind of ties into something you were talking about. Is that it does feel like not most of the time, but in a handful of instances, especially with the Dolphin Kick badge, like it's basically expected that you have it, which is weird because before you play the level, you wouldn't really know that besides whatever signpost in the game does before it. I happened to just equip it probably because I did the badge level first and saw there was water coming up, so I'm like, it'd probably be useful here, and sure enough it was. But I almost feel like kind of maybe as a counterpoint it would be better as a power-up, because you would get it in the level and so you would have at least the option or the ability to have it, whereas if you don't equip it before, you're just kind of stuck. And it's not necessary, you don't need it to beat the level, but it kind of loses out on the feeling that I think power-ups give, where you do feel like more powerful from it, where like, oh, this enables me to do something I couldn't before, like the frog suit. I love the frog suit because it made swimming much less tedious, and when I lost the frog suit, I'm like, oh, that sucks, I should have played better so I didn't lose it. And I don't get that feeling with a dolphin kick. I just like, I just put it on when I know I need it, and I'm like, because it's water and I don't want to deal with it without, but it kind of undermines the feeling of what I was kind of hoping for. And maybe this ties, and so badges overall, whatever, but this maybe ties into a slight problem I have with the power-ups in general this time, where Elephant Mario felt pointless to me. It's a prominent power-up, it's here, pretty constantly, and it doesn't really matter. Like, he doesn't really do anything uniquely elephant-like, except for being able to spout water, which you don't ever really need to do to my memory. And otherwise, like, it just gives him an attack that Cat Mario could do before, but Cat Mario also had all these other unique abilities, like traversing the environment better, and Elephant Mario doesn't really get that, so I don't quite understand why he exists. And I think I found the power-ups, aside from the drill. Drill's pretty legit.
Drill is obviously the best one.
Yeah.
Drill is the only one that does something interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you go up into the ceiling, you are like, this changes everything. You know what I mean? And the elephant is so weird, because I remember reading that developer interview with Nintendo where they were like, oh, well, we wanted something that would shoot water, kind of like Mario Sunshine with Flood. And it's like, well, why did you want that is my question
right.
now. And then there's like all these other elements to an elephant where like I think we all kind of recognize that like a characteristic is that elephants are heavy, but the game like doesn't care about that at all.
Right.
And so like, why an elephant? Why, so it's just very weird. And I kind of come down on it as I think that this game, more than any other Mario Brothers game, just is trying to make the experience easier. And I think that that's what the elephant is there for. It's there to just like, you can pretty much swat away anything coming your way. And I think that the first badge that you get is the parachute hat, which really has no function other than to make the game easier.
Yeah.
So I think that's why that's there. But yeah, it's kind of like a anti-Nintendo choice in a way, because it doesn't have that kind of organic, natural, like, oh, this fits in the way I think it should.
Yeah, it doesn't even thematically tie into this new world, I guess, aside from the water connection to the flowers. Not that they always have before either, but it is standing out to me in this case, because I don't understand the purpose of the elephant, except to be like, look how weird this game is. Look, it's Elephant Mario on the box. Look how different it is. It doesn't really matter, but it gives you an extra health point and you can kick enemies around, you know? So yeah, I thought it was a little disappointing. Otherwise, yeah, Drill's fun. Power, Bubble Mario, I feel like, for me, it didn't do a whole lot, but I know it's going to be huge in the speedrunning community. I've already seen, you know, crazy runs, people like skipping entire levels with this thing, which is cool. You know, I'm glad for them, but yeah, Drill. I actually wish he had gone in even more on the Drill. Because that thing didn't pop up. I didn't think I encountered the Drill until World 3 or World 4, maybe. Like, it wasn't until late.
Great. It shows up late.
Yeah, and it's pretty rare.
Yeah, and like I feel like all of the actions as the Drill are fun to do. Like when you do the ground pound and you go into those crystals, you're like, like that's like a fun thing to do.
I love that.
But like the bubble one stands out to me too because I feel like it's not special enough. It's like they gave them some random overall covers and colors, and they like when you blow out the little bubble, it's like not fun to use. So so I don't know. I'm kind of sour on it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think the best power-ups are the ones that remove friction in the environment or let you do just something totally off the wall. And most of the ones, Drill aside, which is great, don't give me that feeling. So I kind of wish they'd, you know, a lot of people have been comparing this game to Mario 3 for its creativity, and I don't think it's a comparison that's off. I just wish they had gone as far as Mario 3 did with its power-up selection and their abilities, because that's what stands out to me about that game. It's like, oh man, there are so many power-ups and they can do everything, you know, and here it's like, so...
This is kind of taking a step back now, but I want to make sure I ask, do you have like strong feelings, by the way, about this game's physics?
No, I don't. I mean, which is interesting to me, because overall, I think it actually feels really good. I don't, you know, I thought that part of my complaints with New Super Mario Brothers may have been the game feel, but apparently they're by and large identical. I believe the momentum and switching directions might be different, and maybe that's why I think this game feels better. But overall, I think it's felt good to me, or great even.
I agree. It's very comfortable. There's not a lot of like risk. It's I don't ever feel like things aren't working out the way I think they're gonna work in my head. Even when like more advanced things are happening, like you're in that level where you're on like ice blocks and there's that new enemy that like punches them and you're like riding them and then you do a jump. It's like everything like just kind of works the way I assume it's going to work, which I think is what they want. So that's impressive in its own way.
Oh, 100% is. Like I mean, so much of what this game does well is invisible. Like that, and that is an insane compliment. You know, like you know, we can nitpick elements and maybe doesn't push as far as I wish I had in areas, but like, you know, when you get down to like the actual mechanics and the feel and the instantly being able to understand everything, there's probably not a whole lot that does it better than Mario. Like the fact that they can introduce all these random elements that change level to level, and you basically instantly understand what you're supposed to do. That's kind of amazing. That really shows like how far Nintendo's come. You know, Nintendo understands this almost better than anyone, and you know, and the fact that, you know, people, someone made this. Brought this up on Twitter, I think, but like the people making Mario now, at least, you know, some of the people making Mario now are still, you know, are the same ones who have always been with the company. They've been making Mario this entire time, so you have all that knowledge and wisdom coming along, and then they're pairing that now with also these younger developers bringing in their own fresh ideas, and and I think you can kind of feel that coagulate, I guess, into this, you know, really interesting singular experience we have now, which is something we'd been missing before. Like, I would love to get to hear like how, you know, how different the development environment was for this game versus the previous New Super Mario Brothers games. And we've heard some of it, you know, like them having tons of ideas and like not really having any deadlines for the prototyping and whatnot. But I feel like there's more to it. There's a larger story here. You know, like what happened with the new games? Like, was there a mandate that you had to make this in like 6 months or something? And like nothing mattered but the level design? I don't know.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, and I wonder how much of it is like maybe they just like didn't spend any money producing those games, and maybe it's a lot of asset reuse. Because just like as somebody that I don't even really enjoy 2D platformers on the whole too much, I'm never like super drawn to them. Like I loved like Celeste, but that's like a very different kind of game. And then way back like Yoshi's Island, like that's a, you know, the whole thing. But like I like am consistently having fun with Mario Wonder, and like am glad to be playing it and was excited to play it. And I do think a large part of that is kind of what you're saying, where there is that institutional knowledge being passed on. So there is a core quality to it. and a freshness here. But I think what's going such a long way for it now is like maybe I don't know, maybe it is just budget, because there's a degree to which I remember like when the 3DS New Super Mario Brothers game was coming out, the one that was like all about collecting coins.
Right.
And I could not be less interested in that game. Like you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that was like, I saw like that game in motion once and I said, nope, won't be playing that. And I moved on with my life. So you know what I mean? So maybe they've just like always had this in them and didn't need to do it. But I think what this game does for me is it inspires confidence in Nintendo with Mario. And it makes me think like that they've still got it.
Yeah.
And now like just, whether it be 2D or 3D in the future, it's like smooth sailing, no worries, I'm in.
Yeah, no, and that is a great point. Like the fact that the future of 2D Mario actually feels promising for the first time in decades for me as a longtime fan. Because the new Super Mario Brothers games, it felt like, for me, a complete waste of time. Like there was nothing essential about them. Yeah. Maybe aside from the first one, even though I wasn't a fan of that either, but I can see the argument being made for it. The other ones, they all just felt the same. I'm like, I'm not gaining anything from playing these besides wasting my life. You know, I could be doing any number of other things, and I'd probably prefer to. Whereas I didn't have that feel. Like I feel like actually, you know, up until possibly now, even though I don't fully agree with this, but my point is that Donkey Kong, I feel like, really took over the 2D mantle for Mario. Like, Mario World happened, and then Nintendo basically forgot about Mario until New Super Mario Brothers. But then Donkey Kong Country stepped in, you know, like, did its own thing, and felt great. You know, it took the paradigms of Mario, but, you know, evolved it and did different things, and then that continued with Returns and then Tropical Freeze, whereas Mario just kind of sat by the sidelines, which is weird, you know, doing its own redundant thing, which is bizarre to me considering Mario is what, you know, arguably started platforming, the platforming genre, or definitely defined it. And while that idea or ethos carried over into the 3D games of redefining, you know, how platforming works, the 2D games just completely felt stagnant. So it's nice to see Mario finally back in the space, able to compete with a good, compelling game that's fun, cute, and you know, if not necessarily super innovative on the gameplay front, you know, is at least a lot of fun with a lot of care put into it. But yeah, let's kind of wrap this up, Jake. Real quick, is there a singular moment of this game that really sticks out to you? Like when you think of Mario Wonder, what's a defining moment for you? Like is there a single element or a part of a level that you remember being like, oh, that was cool, that was a surprise?
Yeah, for me, maybe this is silly, but for me, I really enjoyed that Ninja level where you have to jump to the beat the first time you find it. And like I tweeted this the other day, but there's like the game like takes those screenshots when you play a level.
That's fun.
And the one, like I saved the one that I got from that level, and it's like me and my fiance, I'm Luigi, she's Yoshi, and just like up in the air, like their limbs stretched out, like smiles on their faces, looking at the camera, and I was like, dang, like you could never get something that looked like this in any other Mario game. Like it just crystallized this moment. And that to me was really cool. It's like it's a gameplay thing that's working visually, and like you get to experience the benefits of the new animations, the new art style, all within this new like gameplay element thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, I love those little touches like that. The photographs are just a lot of fun, I think. I just wish they had kept an album of it specifically as a good review.
Me too.
If I was trying to think of like, you know, what my favorite parts of the game were, and there's a lot of them because we mentioned like this game's very consistent. This game's like by and large refined throughout. It's all really good. I think one moment that stood out to me though is specifically in a Desert Palace level, and I think there may have been two elements. I could be conflating them. One was I love the doorways that turn into like little creatures, you know, like chase after you. They look like little like xenomorphs popping out almost.
Yeah,
love that. And it may have been in the same level where I encountered a puzzle where like I reached a wall and I couldn't seemingly progress any farther. I'm like, how do I get past this freaking wall in my way? And then I think it was a warp pipe I took that popped me into the foreground, and I push a wall in the foreground, and I go back to the plane I was on before, and I can proceed. I'm like, oh, I love that. That's great. And I actually wish the game had leaned more into the foreground and background interplay, but every time it popped up, I loved it, but it's so seldom, it barely feels like it's, you know, a main part of the game, which it isn't. I just wish it were.
Yeah, it happens in like the second level too, and you think that means it's going to be like all over the game, and then you don't see it again forever.
And most of the time they're optional too, so they're very easy to overlook. But they were fun surprises when they popped up. I feel like they can do more with it, kind of like Donkey Kong Country Returns did. So, Jake, what is your overall verdict? I think you said you liked it a lot. Is that your official GameXplain review?
That is my official GameXplain review. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think as far as like a 2D Mario game goes, I'm like super impressed. I'm like so happy to like have this game on Switch. I think it's like a great like end of life title for the console, like a holiday release. I think it's like a It's funny. I think I like this game more as like a co-op title than I do as like a game in its own right. Like if you're like if I was rating it like as a co-op game, I'm like, oh, this is like number 1 on my list. But just like as a whole experience, just like against every other game and my personal taste, liked a lot.
All right, glad to hear that. I would say the same for me. I think it's very good. As I said, it's incredibly refined. Like we basically said, like every level is at a minimum a solid 8 across the board. Like they're all really good. And I think it's nice to finally have 2D Mario back on a track I care about. Like, I love the fact that Mario feels like a character here. All the characters feel like characters here. Cute animations, great level design, and you know, it's just, again, nice to see Mario like having soul in the 2D space again. But for me, you know, I feel like I'm not quite as positive on it for a couple of reasons. One, not really doing anything super new here. The Wonder Flowers are the biggest change, and I feel like they're kind of more gimmicky than anything. It should have been part of the level design, in my opinion. Which, I mean, arguably it is to a degree, but like I don't think you need the toggle to realize that. But also, it feels like Mario's just kind of like catching up with where he should have been this entire time. Like, or if not now, even earlier. And I wish we'd been playing the sequels to this game and seeing what else Mario can do and push those boundaries. Like, I feel like one of the more interesting badges is the zipline badge or yeah, whatever it is. And I didn't use a whole lot, but I felt like I was kind of cheating. But like seeing, you know, having a game based more around, you know, like internalizing something of that nature, for instance, I think could be more interesting. Not that I necessarily need a grappling hook, but my point more is that I'm looking for Mario to push more boundaries, try more things or more new things, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So I think they're on a good track now. I don't think this game like quite blew me away, but I had a lot of fun with it regardless, even if it all kind of like just gelled into like a singular memory for me, and it's hard for me to pinpoint too many specifics about it. So great game, fun. Enjoyed it a lot. Don't know if I'll be revisiting it anytime soon.
I think it's worth noting neither one of us brought up the voice this whole time.
That's actually a wonderful point. By and large, I mean, it's a non-issue, really. I think it's great.
Complete non-issue.
Yeah, I love Charles Martinet, but his new voice does a great job of filling in, to the point that had I not known, Jake, that they replaced Charles, without hearing a comparison, I probably would have never noticed, to be fully honest. So
I agree. I also think maybe the fact that they're just new recordings in general is going a long way.
Too.
Because even like Yoshi, like I made that video the other day with like the old voices, and like just like Yoshi's the same as far as we know, but just like those new recordings, it just like sounds better.
It does sound better.
Just you know what I'm like, oh, that's good. Yeah, that's Yoshi.
Thank God, in time for the Mario movie 2, when they will have Yoshi, which they're not going to have to reuse more voice samples like they did in the credits of the first one. Cool. Also, shout out to Daisy. She sounds perfect, even with a new voice actor. Can't tell the difference. So, all right, everyone. Those are our in-depth thoughts on Mario Wonder. Our very complicated in-depth thoughts. Let us know what you think of Mario Wonder in the comments. Do you agree with us at all? Are we off base? Let us know. We want to hear about it. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Mario Wonder and everything else Nintendo as well. We'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.